Welcome back to Everyday Economics, a podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, president of the 501c3 nonprofit Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics is a production of America's Talking Network. You can check out all of our great podcasts at americastalking.com. To support Everyday Economics and podcasts such as this one, please make your tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We're recording this episode on Monday, February 13th, and joining me as always is my friend, colleague, and style guru, Dr. Orphe Divounguy. He's a PhD economist. I want to talk about the Consumer Price Index. You and I have discussed this prior, not just the CPI, but other government data that is out there for people to consume, that it is presented on a deadline and that oftentimes is revised. The Consumer Price Index was revised.
That's right. We had revisions in the labor market numbers for the last quarter of last year. We also had revisions in the consumer price index. And look, I think for our audience, the first thing is why? Why are these revisions necessary? Well, the revised estimates usually include additional information that was not available at the time of the initial release. And that information makes the revised estimates more accurate. So it's a good thing, not a bad thing. But in general, this is the big news is that the labor market was stronger than originally reported. And CPI was also higher than originally reported. And what that means is that prices are really high and still growing rapidly, but they're decelerating, right? I think that's the main message that we need to take out of this is that price growth is still coming down. Price growth is trending down. And I think that's the main message. Even though the CPI numbers were a little bit higher than we had hoped, price growth is on a downward trend. I think our audience needs to know that. Creates a little bit of anxiety amongst a lot of people. Is inflation decelerating fast enough to avoid us going into a recession or to avoid future federal rate hikes? We suffered this year. 2022 was a rough year, right? We had jumbo Fed rate hikes and at the same time, rapid price growth. Record high price growth. And so households are feeling it.
Just to kind of go back and to make sense of this for people, we're talking about the numbers from December. They were changed.
October, November as well were revised up a little bit.
That's where I'm headed with this. And so are they all headed in the same direction?
They moved up, right? So the December number, for example, that was the biggest revision. The December number came in lower than November. We had prices falling in December. They did not fall in December. They went up in December. But in general, price growth has been slowing since summer of 2022. That's the big takeaway. And we expect price growth to continue to come down. One reason for that is, I look at the market rents that people are paying have gone down. And so year over year, rent growth has come down. So that's about 30% of the CPI number, right? And that's going to continue to come down. So the good news is price growth is still trending down. The bad news is that it's trending down at a slower pace than we had hoped, that we were initially seeing in the original December numbers.
Purely anecdotal. And this is not inside this data, obviously, because this is an anecdote from over this weekend. My middle girl, who works at a grocery store, worked both Saturday and Sunday, which meant that I got to go to the grocery store both Saturday and Sunday. Stopped in and bought some things ahead of the Super Bowl Saturday, and then had to pick up some other things Sunday that we didn't have, for the game itself. And I walked past the dairy case where the eggs sit. But I saw something I had not seen before. I've seen it before, but not in a long time. The price of eggs had gone down on a sale from $4.99 a dozen for regular old commoditized farm eggs to $2.99.
Wow.
A dozen.
Wow.
And so
that's interesting.
It's the first time that I can remember in probably 6 or 8 months that I was able to buy a dozen of eggs for $3.
That's very interesting. I don't see that on my end over here. In fact, they have a limit on how many packs of eggs you can buy in my grocery store. But yeah, I think we heard there was it was more than just a demand story. I think we had a bird flu issue when it comes to the price of eggs. We had this, the supply problem, right? And so
also a mysterious fire on the East Coast that wiped out some ridiculous number of egg-laying hens.
That's right. And so that could be that's the part of the problem for the egg story. But in general, I'm still very much optimistic that the Fed can land this plane. Now, of course, the worry is it going to be a soft landing or a hard landing? Is the economy re-accelerating, and are we going to see inflation pick up again like it did in the 70s? Is a worry that everybody has on their mind. Economists are thinking about that. I'm sure the Fed is worried about that. Did did financial condition get too loose too soon? I think the Fed tough talk on inflation last week after that jobs number has tightened financial conditions significantly over the past week. We saw that the yield on the 10-year went up, the mortgage rates went up. We're starting to see that, people are concerned and are worried that maybe, Fed policy is aiming for higher rates for longer. And that's going to slow things down considerably. So look, Chris, we're going to have to find out, right, where these CPI numbers are headed, because the CPI numbers for January come out on Valentine's Day this year.
Good insights for Dr. Orphe Divounguy. This has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of other quality podcasts at americastalking.com.